Welcome to SciTech Culture with Steve Kern and Ben Warner, where we examine science, technology, and culture in the 21st century. Visit our website at scitechculture.com. Hello and welcome to SciTech Culture. My name is Ben Warner and I'm joined once again by my good friend and colleague Steve Kern. How are you today, Steve? I think I can recognise your face through the filter here, but I wonder if our computers can.
Oh yeah, well, probably not our laptops, but very likely Google. So.
Absolutely. Well, it's interesting because, we were talking about the iPhone 10 just the other in one of our recent episodes, and, they've introduced that facial recognition sort of unlocking technology. It's not something new, and I was thinking about this in light of a story I saw on the ABC about governments and big corporations and whatever using facial recognition technology, governments in particular, I guess, for law enforcement purposes through CCTV, etc. That for all the talk that, people might be, apprehensive about using the facial unlock features on the iPhone 10, that if governments have been using it at that level to recognize people's faces through footage and other imagery that they can collect, and they can do it successfully, that maybe, we shouldn't be so worried that it's going to work or not. And one example of that comes straight off the top of my head is passport control. If they're able to successfully make that work, I think maybe we can trust an iPhone to unlock our faces.
Yeah, well, I kind of agree. People seem to be worried about privacy issues, but make no mistake, every time you plaster a photo of yourself on Facebook, Facebook knows who you are. And that's how machine learning actually, is done. In fact, I've got no basis for making this suggestion, but I wouldn't be surprised if Facebook had a subsidiary which was probably selling face recognition technologies out to the wider market.
Yeah, the old under-the-table business.
Well, machine learning for facial recognition can only be done when you have literally, millions and millions and millions of images. And probably the only place where you've got literally millions and millions and millions of images of different faces is Facebook. So it would make sense to me.
Yeah, absolutely. But what about that privacy angle you just mentioned then? I just think it's almost I don't want to say a redundant point, but we're just not living in that world anymore where it's impossible to get past it. Even if you're not uploading, a picture of yourself to Facebook every day, your face is being captured somewhere at some point if you go out into the public sphere anywhere. So the only way you could, and if you were to watch the Oliver Stone film Snowden, you can't even have your computer on your table switched off without the NSA being able to switch on your camera and start looking at you. But that's obviously a more extreme version, but it just nowhere, unless you were to literally go and lock yourself into a log cabin in the middle of nowhere, you are going to be photographed somewhere at some point and probably catalogued somewhere. So I don't know how you can get around that privacy issue.
It's a great question. And look, currently, while you're being tracked, you're probably not being watched. Give it another 10 years, they'll be able to track you and watch you. And if you deviate for whatever reason from your normal path on the way to work, there probably a flag will come up. I don't know. I don't know.
Just as an example to throw in there, in this ABC article, they're talking about how Moscow has a network of 150,000 CCTV cameras, but the processing power behind it at the moment can only monitor around 2,000 to 4,000 cameras in real time. Today. So I'm sure that it'll get to the point where it can do all 150,000 at some point in the future. But, in which case we're probably going to end up in a Minority Report style, world. But,
absolutely.
But I don't know, would they use that for that? I think there was the idea that, if the only way to sort of collect information about a person of interest is to collect all information all of the time, and then use the software to be able to search all of that information, as opposed to trying to search specific information and collect that.
That can be done now. So, for instance, every major city on the planet, so whether it's Moscow or Melbourne or Paris or London, there are CCTV cameras all over the place. And if they can locate you entering or on one of those cameras at a certain time, they can then track your movements through the entire city. They can do that in real time, or they can come back and review it and do it, later.
Yeah.
So, that fundamental ability already exists. And, look, let's face it, most of us don't do anything wrong. So most of the time it doesn't matter. The question is what happens when it does? And the other question is what if, some group suddenly decides they don't want to be recognised anymore and starts walking around with hoods over their heads, just wearing balaclavas? Do they then have to come out and make a law, that people can't wear balaclavas? Yeah, it's just it becomes this crazy sort of scenario. I mean, people, I think, technically have a right not to be tracked.
Yeah.
But
that is what it is right now. That's how it's working.
That's right, but some people would say otherwise. And at the moment, I think the case is we don't care that we're tracked. Because I think everyone knows, if you say to someone, you can be tracked whenever you walk all over the city, they say, yeah, and they might not be thrilled about it, but no one,
no one really,
gets up in arms.
Yeah, no one really does anything.
But I wonder what happens when that tracking somehow, and I'm not suggesting the government would do this, because there's no reason that a private company like Google couldn't set up sensing or tracking all over the city, and they can already do it. And your phone starts going off telling you that something's happening in the place you're about to walk past that might interest you.
Yeah.
Or someone hacks the system and tells you to go there.
Yeah.
And then blackmails you for being there.
Yeah.
Who knows? I mean, this is very dystopian. I think there's a lot of good things that can come from this.
I think we've mentioned before, this whole idea of the dystopian future is that it doesn't take into account the positive aspects to the technology, for instance. And I don't think that's ever really been accurately captured in any sort of dystopian talk, or even in dystopian fiction. That it's always assumed that there's some sort of negative connotation to it all. I mean, just going back to the iPhone 10 as an example, where they were explaining how their facial recognition unlocking software works, and the amount of sensors that they put into the iPhone 10 to be able to infrared 3D mapping, all of that stuff is really quite amazing, really, that it has the ability to do that sort of thing. And I would think governments would have more significant tools at their disposal rather than a consumer product like that.
Well, that's an interesting point. Quite possibly not. Now, we've seen, law enforcement try to force Apple to hand over, access codes. What about the facial recognition data? Because what gets closer to your face more accurately than your phone? Nothing. So if we're talking about surveillance cameras, they're always from a reasonable distance. They can be good resolution, but they're not high resolution.
Yeah.
So I imagine, actually, if you got the data from your Apple account and then matched it with whatever facial recognition is going through a system of cameras, it probably improve the accuracy. Now, that's scary.
Yeah, absolutely. Is there I guess, an endpoint to any of it all? Just to kind of wrap it up, is it it's just more of the same. I think we've been dancing around the issue that we're focusing on facial recognition, but it's that whole concept of privacy and how all of this technology kind of invades, our world. Even with before, sort of the smartphones had the ability to do facial recognition. The fact is, the dumb candy bar phones we used to have could be tracked through the the signals that they would emanate through cell towers. So it's not as if this concept of being tracked is anything new. It's just it's just becoming more sophisticated, I guess.
Well, look, absolutely. And as I always say, really, if the government's tracking me, maybe in the 1980s, that was a really scary thing. Today, I'm more uncertain of being tracked by Facebook and Google. And if they can recognise your face and they can track you, then, they're private companies. What right do they have? And I think that's the question that society should be asking. They might have a right. It might be fine. But, I think to me, I don't know. I don't know that it is right. And as you and I keep saying, because one day it will surely be true, there'll be a big bust up over this and people may well lose faith in those services.
Yeah, absolutely. All right, Steve, we might wrap it up there. So don't forget our website, scitechculture.com. You can get all of our links and content there, and you can subscribe to all our channels, YouTube, Vimeo. We've got some Instagram accounts, and hopefully you'll enjoy all the content we have to offer there. All right, so that's it for this episode. We'll catch you next time.